real quick, explain officiating wrestler dads.
And it was one of those things I thought I was going to need an escort out of the gym. Sometimes in life there's no roadmap, right? As much as you think I've got everything mapped out, well, there's a fork in the road, there's a jump in the road, there's a cornfield in front of you, and you got to get through those things.
Hard to kill.
I read that you got your start at a golf course. Your grandpa got you into that. So how could you explain, like, was that just like a fun thing, take the kid out on the golf course? How did it develop into being what you wanted to do for a career?
It really boiled down to work, actually.
Okay.
So he was a dairy farmer his entire life, and when he retired from dairy farming, he constantly got up early in the morning and didn't know what to do with himself, so he joined a small little semi-private golf course, and they lived in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, and he always taught the value of work, and so they still, even in his late 70s, he was still farming about 70 acres worth of vegetable crops, so like lima beans, sweet corn, watermelon, muskmelon. Those were kind of the crops. There was a big cannery in town, and so a lot of times we had to pick rocks like the day before, and then if we got enough work done, then we'd go play golf in the morning. But it was one of those things when you get out at 5:30 in the morning. We just talked about sunrises. It's one of the most beautiful, peaceful times in the morning. And then I started to realize, I'm like, wow, this could be like a profession. And I love being outdoors and never really dreamed of kind of being in an office type setting. And so this was just a great opportunity to be out in nature. And I was blessed enough, small world, my godparents, Randy Smith, ran the golf course. So he was the superintendent at Tacoma Country Club, which is about 20 minutes away from where I grew up. So that's where I worked for 8 years going through college.
And it just stuck. You're like, I just want to stay doing this. I just want to stay on the course.
You know what, the crews, it's like wrestling teams, right? Each year is just a little bit different.
Yeah.
Different characters, come through. And you kind of have to be unique to be up at 5:30 in the morning to go out and cut grass. And some mornings it's 40 degrees, some mornings it's like already 80. But to be outside and then, assume like leadership roles, and I spent time there. I spent time at Maple Bluff. After college, I went to Milwaukee, worked for a private Jewish club. For about 3 years, we finished an irrigation system install. But I was really looking for a superintendent's job at like 24, 25, 26, and I looked like everybody else, right? I looked just like everybody else. I had a degree, I had, years of experience on a private country club, and just was struggling to find that next step as a superintendent. And one of my college buddies said, hey, why don't you come finish this grow-in? Arthur Hills was finishing a grow-in of a public course about 40 minutes away. It was more of a lateral, but at that point in time, I was like, you know what, I'll give it a shot and we'll finish the grow-in. I loved construction, digging in the dirt, growing up on a farm. So we finished the grow-in, and about 18 months after being there, I interviewed for 3 jobs and got offered all 3. One was in St. Louis, one was in Kansas City, and one was in Michigan. The Michigan one was really appealing because it was closer to home, and it was northern season grasses. Once you start getting further south, St. Louis, Kansas City, you get in those transition zones where I call it the sweaty armpit time of the year. It's just so hot.
You have experience with that type of grass just being from Wisconsin, So.
Correct. So it was an easier transition. Here's the other thing. When I interviewed at that place, I got there, about 6 hours early, toured the entire golf course. Funny story, I changed in behind the post office because it's kind of a touristy area, so there wasn't like a place to change, so I changed behind the lakeside post office.
You gotta do what you gotta do, man.
Yep. So I drove over and drove back that day, but it was one of those things where I didn't have anything to lose because I had another offer at that point in time. I interviewed one more time with another place, but the place was so bad. It was this private golf course, and it was just a disaster. And it was one of those things where I'm like, either they're going to really receive what I have to say because it's critical of the place, not, hey, this place looks really good, it was bad. Yeah. And that's what they wanted to hear, and they wanted to see somebody that had a vision to change what was actually there. So I got offered the job and started, and they had a 10-year plan to rebuild the golf course. We did it in 3.
All right, guys, a quick 30-second break. I want to give a shout-out to Chris Inman of Idea Cleveland. He's the guy that provided us with the new mics, helping the show sound so much better than it did before. And he provided us with some podcasting tips and tricks to make the show as a whole better. So I want to give him a shout out. Idea Cleveland. He can help you with your podcast. He can make videos for your website or social media. Chris Inman is the man. Give him a look up. Reach out to him. Get a hold of him if you need some help with your stuff. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate you, man. Back to the show.
And then I got recruited to go back to Milwaukee. But there I got to coach high school wrestling. So that was my kind of intro into coaching. I officiated for 20 years. Right out of high school, I had 2 great coaches. I wasn't good enough to wrestle at Madison, but they're like, hey, we always need officials. So I helped pay my way through school by officiating. So I did junior high, I did JV. I actually got, I roomed with 4 girls the second to last year of college. One of them's boyfriends was Bart Chelsvig, who wrestled for Wisconsin, or wrestled for Iowa. He was one of the Wisconsin coaches and said, hey, we need another official for the Northern Open. Like, I don't know about that. It's college. I had fun. It was different, for sure. They put themselves in, they set up for, 2.5 minutes to get that one quick shot, and then they win 2-1. Like, I kind of like the kids that roll around.
You're giving out 10 points in one period.
Whoa, 2 over here. Oh, we got the other 2 going that way, so it's fun.
Real quick, explain for anyone watching, I guess I would say officiating, let's say wrestler dads. The young ages and the young ages. Any experiences with that?
As in them yelling at me or coming down on the mat?
Anything good or bad?
I would say wrestling is one of those passion sports, right? You got to be passionate.
Well, your blood's out there on the mat,
Yeah, my son got to wrestle at Ignatius for the last 3 years, so sophomore through. His first year I didn't coach. Second year he asked me to step in, and so that was the first time being a dad and then coaching. So I could see the difference. But having said that, as an official, you really tried to be as anonymous as possible.
You would be as neutral as anonymous. Yep, you're just there and you're just
you don't want to be known.
You're to maintain the boundaries and whatnot.
Your goal is to not be seen. If you do a good job, you let the wrestlers decide on that. We were talking the other day about one of the craziest matches. I got to meet Chet Peters and the whole Peters family from down in the Claymont area. And those are 9 wrestlers and their families.
There's a lot of families out in the Claymont area that just pump wrestlers out, dude. But I feel like that's just what they do out there, man.
Yeah, Lane Peters wrestled out at Army. So anyway, we were talking about crazy matches, and I had one. It was East Troy Elkhorn. It was for the conference title, and it was one of those gyms that they had darkened, and the center light and the main event, and it was like the 2 towns against each other. And I stalled the heavyweight out of the match.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they lost. And it was one of those things I thought I was going to need an escort out of the gym.
Yeah.
And the coach of the losing team, he goes, I hate to tell you this, he goes, but that actually was the right call. He goes, he just blocked and turned. And he didn't even try to circle back in. He just kept going out. And the other guy had 2 on him, so it was going to go either way. But then the one guy just decided to retreat right out of bounds. And the gym goes wild. And I'm just like, this is.
It's tough. It's a bad spot for you because it is the right call, but. Even having to call a match on that too, but you got it's your job, man.
Well, and it was the conference title.
Right.
This wasn't like it was just a couple of teams, in a duel. This was, and it was awesome. I mean, it was electric. Crowd. Right. They're screaming back and forth. Gym's full. Those are the matches you want.
Right.
Yeah, it's one of those where you're excited to be a part of it, but you don't want to be a part of it.
It happens though when you step on the mat. That's your job. Your job is to do what you can, and you try to do the best job so the right the right outcome happens. You never want to be that official where you miss something, and so you try to stay in shape. And new officials always try to get into it because they're like they want to see the action. The best advice I can give is stay on the outside and it's just let the wrestlers work. Keep them in, keep them doing their thing, keep them hustling. And then set expectations. When you show up at the weigh-in, you're like, here's what I expect. You're gonna get hit for stalling if you step out of the center the mat. We want to see action.
Right. So. No doubt. It's you see it. I know we've seen it for years. You've seen it for a lifetime as well. Dude, even the best officials are getting reamed at some point, even for the right call. Like it's just like you said, there's so much passion involved in it, man. And it's just like, dude, people get upset in that moment and whatnot, and it's like that'd be a hard thing to officiate, dude. I think I could see my dad wanting to do something like that, and that would be something I'd be like, nah,
you shouldn't.
Don't do that, dude.
You gotta be a little hard of hearing. You
gotta block some stuff out. I feel like.
I think only one time did one parent ever, and it wasn't a dad, it was a mom.
That's it. I was asking about moms too, man. Yeah. I mean, they got their place as well.
Oh yeah, so definitely. But sometimes they just get a little bit, and it wasn't even. I think it was just in one of the gyms that we were at, and sometimes they got to leave.
Right. No, that's cool. I just wanted to touch on that one. people who are not in the sport of wrestling would have no idea, you know, like.
Yes.
But no, that's very cool, very cool. When did you start wrestling? And I think you said, did you say you stopped before college, or what you did?
Okay. Yeah, so I started wrestling in 3rd grade. My mom used to throw my buddies and I into a station wagon, and we'd go all over southern Wisconsin. And
Nice.
I remember our first one. We didn't. It was my mom taking us, and that we got beat up pretty bad, as I remember.
Yeah.
And one of my buddies goes, "At least we didn't cry like some of those other kids did."
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
Wrestling. I'll be honest. It teaches you a lot, and you guys know this.
Builds character.
If you're not prepared, you're gonna get beat.
It's
and
true.
I think in life, as an executive, I run a $150 million company, and the reality is you got to be prepared. And when you step out, I love the way some of these teams prepare now. I mean, they look at every move and they look at tendencies, and you look at the Penn States, and they're doing a lot of homework before they ever wrestle a match.
Right.
And I think in life that's one of the things. So I started in 3rd grade, wrestled all the way through, and I would say I was average at best. I just was one of those things where it was a great sport and participated. Tough conference. I remember the conference title was hinged on my match. The guy, the 171 pounder, tore his knee up the week before. We had to wrestle Pecatonica, which was like the crosstown, cross city rival.
Okay.
And I was like 152, 155, so I had to gain some weight to get up to 67.
Yeah.
And the only goal my coach told me is don't get pinned. He goes, if you don't get pinned, he goes, we win this match. Just based on the numbers. Sure enough, I lost 13-1.
Okay.
So it was just a major. It wasn't a tech fall, and we won. We won the duel in the conference.
It's a dub, man.
But you got to take your lumps.
You got to take it, man.
Yep.
You gotta take
That's
it,
a team win right there, though.
It's a team win,
That's
dude.
a self-sacrifice in a way, but I mean, honestly, you had to go out there and you were the last piece regardless of the score, so.
Yep.
Right.
You got to do your part, and I think that's the part that I enjoyed about coaching all those years was the matchups. It's like, okay, and you guys know this.
It's like,
I normally wrestle this way, but I got to go up one.
Right.
Or I got to win my match. I got to get a major. I got to get a 5 or a 6 out of this. Based on the points.
Yeah. You're the general to a little army, man. And there's a lot. It's chess. It's still chess, man. And everyone thinks of the sport so much as an individual sport because I mean you see one-on-one, but I mean there's still a ton of team aspect to the sport, man. Especially when we get into the dual meet type of stuff, man. Everyone got to pull their weight, man.
That's the fun part. I enjoyed it. I can still remember in Michigan we had to wrestle Brandywine, and that was the rival school, and the former head coach was down there, and we hadn't beat him in years.
Okay.
And we had changed the gym up, we had darkened it, put the center light in, and we had the matches all counted.
Okay.
We knew exactly what we needed to do. One of our 35-pounder pulled it out, got a major instead of just a 3-point win, and we won by 2.
There you go.
And they were watching the points too.
Yep.
I saw the head coach threw down this thing because they knew they had lost.
Yep.
Because our kids were, we were going to hammer them.
Yep. That was that. Oh man, it's
the swing.
That's the swing match.
match.
The swing match, dude.
Yeah.
Yep.
That is the swing match. Yep.
And he had come out that year. He had never wrestled before, and it was just one of those things where I'm like, sometimes
It's awesome when a kid does that unexpectedly, man.
Wrestling is one of those sports that unlike basketball, where it's just kind of different. You can still pick the sport up and be successful. I love it when you get a freshman kid that comes in when I was coaching at Marquette, never wrestled before, and then makes a state tournament in their junior or senior year.
Dude, it's awesome. I do some assistant coaching, volunteer assistant coaching at Avon, and we had one kid that started as a freshman, and then junior year he's taken 4th in D1 state. And then it's awesome, man. They just like some of these guys they just peak later and. He's wrestling. He's wrestling D1 at OU right now. And it's just like it's cool, man. Yet some people are so deterred from the sport from starting later because they think they're too late. Dude, it depends who you are. It's an individual sport in a way too. You can still pick things up on your own. And you don't know. You don't know.
Yeah.
So
what would you say is one of the most important things you learned from wrestling?
Again, I talk about being prepared. It's one of those things where you get into it, what you put in, you get out. and I think it's one of those things where there's so many lessons when some days you're just going to get beat, right? Some days your opponent's just better, and I think there's a realization of kind of being humble, when you win, and being humble when you lose, and those are some great lessons to, and look, there's some pain points, right? You're gonna have to push yourself through some really tough times, whether you're battling an injury, broken fingers, when it broke my nose, Coach Whittier, so. Those things all happen, and you got to figure out mentally how to get through it. And I think that's what wrestling does for you, because you have to be mentally prepared from so many different levels. I remember we were wrestling down at Mineral Point, which is like a hotbed of wrestling, like a Claymont, like one of those areas. And this guy from Riverdale, Jay Gribble, he was a mental guy. He'd come up to you, you're next! He'd just get right up in your face, and you're just like, man, are you okay? And then you go out and but he was wired so tight, and he produced. He was state champ. But that was just...
That's how he did it.
And he paced, and he paced, and he paced, and he paced, and he wore the rubber off the bottom of his shoes. Back then, we didn't have iPads, we didn't have, earbuds, we had Walkmans, right? We had Walkmans with a tape mix that we made, so this is back in the late 80s, early 90s. But the mental preparation, and sometimes you psych yourself out. Right?
Yeah, you can.
So you've got to really think about that mental aspect of things. Physical is one part, but not always the strongest wrestler wins, right? They can go down just as fast as anybody else. For
sure, man. No, it's cool. Yeah, everyone has their way, their routine, whatever, their prep style, whatever it has to be, man. And it's interesting to see, man. We see it. I think we see it in fighting, and you see it in wrestling as well, man. You don't know. They're primal sports, and it's interesting to see the different types of prep, from person to person. It's cool. It's definitely cool.
It's definitely a different thing too, realizing that, in wrestling you're not always going to win, and that's helped me a lot in life, because you can lose the day and still be very successful in what you're doing, and sometimes you don't even really know why you got beat up by the day, but it still happens. So that's something that's become more present, I should say, in my life, that I've realized that, like, man, like, why couldn't I win today? And it's like, it doesn't fall that way sometimes. So it's I'd say that was the biggest thing, because inevitably you're, unless you're just one of those guys that starts off and kicks everyone's butt, like you're gonna end up losing more than you win in the grand scheme of things. So.
You try not to, right?
You try not to.
You just gotta be ready, though.
Yeah, with the right headspace, but there are times, and I think there's always this mindset of I gotta back up, and I gotta regroup, and I gotta rethink, and what went well, and that carries you all the way through life, because there are times in the running a park district with 1,000 plus full-time employees, 1,400 seasonals. Some days you have to redirect and re-prepare, and sometimes I think that's what sports teaches you, is that, hey, I'm not always going to, and I'm going to have to handle those emotions, and I'm going to have to either, and it's interesting, being on the wrestling side and then being on the coaching side and being an official, you see all different levels of opportunities, right? You see some of them that, they win with ease, sometimes they have to grit it out. Sometimes they hit a locker at the end of it. Right. You got to work through all those levels of emotions.
Yeah. No doubt. I think if you look at it the right way, man, wrestling can definitely prepare you for like the highs and the lows, the ebb and flow of it. You're up here. You're not gonna stay up here for too long. It's you don't just get up here and just stay here. You're gonna come back down here, but you ain't gonna stay down here for too damn long either. It's just it's up and down, man. But it's at the end of the day too. I think that's also that's just like he said. It's life. You're not gonna win every day. So
in managing the MetroParks, so you're responsible for thousands of acres of land, multiple parks, some golf courses as well. How do you manage so many different things all at once? Because you've got to have multiple projects going on, and it's got to be more than probably both him and I have ever managed at once. Combined.
Yeah. I think it's part of what I thrive on. I absolutely love I'm best when I'm busiest. And when you look at 24,400 acres, 8 golf courses, 5 nature centers, 18 park reservations, marinas, parking structures. We have a lot under management, a world-class zoo. that takes a lot of time. The interesting thing is that you have to trust but verify. You have to hire the right people for the right pay at the right time, and then you have to trust that they're going to be able to do their jobs. And as a leader, it's not your job to do their job, it's your job to empower them and get them the resources. And I think there's a huge difference. When I left, when I was talking about Michigan coming back to Milwaukee, the difference was I was managing managers at a very young age. And then I had to realize there were different ways to go at it, right? Just like in wrestling, there's different ways to take somebody down. There's different ways to do a breakdown. There's different ways to crossbody. There's just different techniques, and there's different ways to run properties or run things. And so when you start to understand there's common grounds, like here's the goals, here's what I want to get to, help us get there. And it may not always be your way. Then sometimes you have to step back and say, okay, we got there, and then can you improve the process? And here it's kind of that way as well. I mean, we have land in all the counties surrounding, so Lake Lorraine, Geauga, Medina, Summit counties. Our taxing authority is really Cuyahoga County and Hinckley Township, but running all these different things. I mean, right now the zoo is going to run $22 million worth of projects over the next 20 months. So we're doing a new front entrance with our Mandel administration addition. We're going to do a $6.5 million bear exhibit, and we're working on a whole new front entrance concept. So that's $20+ million there. We just got $1 million from the RAISE grant, which is a federal transportation program to help connect trails. So this healthy lifestyle is really what we're about. We're also really trying to make sure that we can connect residents where their house is. So, we talk about the parks. You're right near it, right here in Strongsville, right near the Valley Parkway, the chalet. Great training at the chalet stairs. You want good cardio. But having that access, but being able to lead through some of those things. Pandemic was tough, right? Not a lot of contact. The parks were the place where people went. We lost $17 million worth of funding. We didn't get additional. We had to manage within. We had people from our administration building washing golf carts, taking tickets. So we had to pivot. And some of those things, wrestling, you have to think sequences. Where am I at? 1 move, 2 moves, 3 moves ahead. And, we had scenarios 1 through 6. We thought we'd never get to 6. Well, we hit scenario number 5 by like August of the pandemic. We're like, wow, this is not good. But we managed to, again, work our way through it. You trust your leadership team. You communicate effectively. All those things led to us getting through it in a good fashion.
Right.
But I love it. I love being busy. I love challenging people and hopefully inspiring them to continue to do great things.
So outside of we can all relate on the pandemic being something that none of us could have foresaw, but what's an example of maybe something job specific or even life specific where something came out of nowhere, you couldn't have saw it coming, and you've had to act and just pivot on the spot?
Well, I would say the zoo closing was probably, we got lumped into the kind of entertainment business. Parks could stay open, right? Well, how was the zoo any different than a park? And so we kept arguing that, and we didn't win. We didn't get it. We didn't get open. We were closed for 2.5 months, and then it was one of those epiphany ideas. I wake up at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, hey, why don't we just do a drive-through? Right? Why don't we do a drive-through? People can drive through the park, and so we worked very hard at State Rep Tom Patton. He got to the governor's office. We worked with the cities. What I would call, their group that would, authorize basically, it to go through. And we literally got permission. We opened the next day. So we could have been closed for another 30 days, but then we started doing this drive-through. And now it's actually working through our Wild Winter Lights and Asian Lantern Festival and all those other things. So that was a good cause and effect because we're on 188 acres and you can drive through. I don't know if you've done it or not, but it's a pretty unique opportunity to see the zoo very differently. So that was a quick pivot. And when I pitched to the zoo director, he's like, you want to drive cars in the zoo? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And a couple of Chieftain, one of our construction companies, said, hey, we'll help put some barriers around the exhibits. And we had no problems. It was an absolutely fantastic pivot. It was an audible. It was an audible call, and we did it. We achieved it. And now we're actually using it in our business model.
When you have an idea like that, do you seek, like a conversation with someone you trust to almost like validate, okay, is this a good or a bad idea? Because I feel like I have ideas, what different things we can do for this podcast, things of that nature. And I typically lean on people close to me that I feel like can give me good, honest feedback. Is that similar for you, or?
It's a little bit different being in leadership. You need to be seen as, strong and that you've got this thing kind of worked through. Having said that, A lot of times I'll throw high-level ideas at the team, and then we'll sit and spitball it around and work it through, and they almost always come up with something that's better than what the original idea was.
Right.
And that's the uniqueness of having a great team around you. The idea can be, a kernel of corn that grows a crop. And so essentially those are the things that happen. It's like, hey, did you think about this? Do you think about this? How are we going to do tickets? What are we going to do for a pull-off if a car goes down? What about this? How are we going to sell? So all of those things, they start to answer. And so sometimes you're very high-level visionary, and then you have to get down into strategy tactics of how do you deploy that. And when you build a team for that, it actually becomes pretty natural to be able to achieve some of those things. So certainly leaning on people, but that was one of those things that nobody had done. And we're just like, we're going to do it. We're absolutely going to do it, and this is what we did. We did the igloos. That wasn't necessarily, this new idea because they had been kind of out, but we bought like 14 of them. And the business model at Merwin's during the winter, you can get 100 people at night, or you can get like 4 depending on the weather. The igloos are all pre-booked. So for us, we can control staff, we can control food, we can control costs, and we can control profit. And so from that end, it's a great experience. We've had a sheet of ice down there. It's kind of a winter wonderland. So that was another good cause and effect of the pandemic that caused our business model to change for the better.
Yeah, you're able to take a look. Okay, we know we're going to have, four igloos booked, instead of having a full staff. Like if that's all we're going to have, we only need this amount of food, these people, stuff
Correct.
like that. It's very interesting instead of looking at it from a standpoint of, I guess that's kind of taking the how do we be prepared, like, well, you can control the variable of knowing how many people are going to be there that way.
Yes, it's actually a really good way to, in a restaurant, like I said, you could be 200 plus full or 10, just depending on the weather. And Merwin's is this unique little kind of recreational oasis down on the Cuyahoga River, and the igloos have done very well. And now to have this winter fest where you can rent ice skates on a real sheet of ice. Ultimately, our goal is at the chalet where our toboggan chutes are to put an Olympic-sized sheet of ice and then hopefully host some hockey games.
Oh, that would be awesome.
So something that's outdoorsy,
Yeah.
I think would be a super cool addition to the region.
We were just down there. We took the I'm probably gonna get the words mixed up, but the Cleveland comedy bus, because they have that stop. The halfway point is down at Merwin, so we hopped on it at Collision Bend and then made our way down there. We were trying to get a dinner reservation down there, but we waited too long, so we ended up going somewhere else. But I'd been down there one time for a Wrestlers in Business event, and I'd never been down there. It's a beautiful location. It's awesome.
Yeah, it was something that the Western Rowing Association really put together, preserving this with a whole host of others that include Trust for Public Land. And, partnerships are one of the big things that we've really focused on in this community. We can't do it alone, and I think, when you have a wrestling partner, your wrestling partner makes you better, right? If you pick the mediocre, you're not going to get better, and if you want to get better, you pick the best.
Right.
And when we're here working with the Port on Irishtown Bend, or working with Land Studio or West Creek Conservancy, partners make us better. And I think that's one of the fun parts that Merwin's kind of spawned out of this huge partnership now at 7 Acres Preserve. And now the Rowing Foundation has come full circle, so we've got that. We're talking about a community sailing center, so it's really spurred some really unique economic development as well as preserving green space on the river.
It's awesome.
Nice.
Do you have any further questions for Brian?
I do not. How about yourself?
Is it time?
Is it time?
Is it time?
It might be time.
At the end of every show, we like to ask each guest what makes them hard to kill. So that's not necessarily the literal physical translation, but essentially, what do you feel like makes you unique? And if push comes to shove, what's going to give you the ability to scramble and make things happen for yourself, for your family? So what is it that makes you hard to kill?
Just tenacious, absolutely tenacious. It's one of those things where, the energy you bring, it exudes through you into others. And, you've got to show no fear in what you're doing. Sometimes in life there's no roadmap, right? As much as you think, I've got everything mapped out, well, there's a fork in the road, there's a jump in the road, there's a cornfield in front of you, and you've got to get through those things. And I really never take no. If we need to get something done, like the lakefront's a great example. It took 2 government administrations, like 4 ODNR directors. We just never gave up. And we ended up pulling $14 million from a state capital budget, which is almost unheard of, to rebuild the parks for this community. That's a huge deal. So a little bit like a pit bull, just bulldogging your way through, pushing yourself through. And again, wrestling teaches you so many of those things that, you can score in 10 seconds. You can pin a person in 5.
Yeah.
And so, you never know when your opportunity is going to be there. So
Right.
be prepared, be tenacious, and get after it. And look, none of us get out of this alive, right?
No,
So
we don't.
use every day to your advantage.
Yep.
And I think that's the part that makes life fun. Is like, you know what, you are what you eat, and just keep working hard.
A dog in a fight is a dog in a fight, man.
Yeah. It's a very sound mindset to have in a world that's seemingly losing that. So it's refreshing. It's refreshing to hear. I mean, I think that's something both Drew and I do ourselves, where it's like, okay, if route A, B, and C are closed, it's not just like whine to the people closing routes A, B, and C until they open it back up. It's like, well, we'll dig a trench underneath, and that's route D.
How do we make D and E just in case?
Yeah. So
Yeah, there's a statement, and it's a Latin, and it basically says, if not, we will find a way. We will make our own way. And there's a great example of that around the trail from Wendy Park to Whiskey Island. The sewer district has got this huge tunnel, and the railroad is there, the road is there, and basically they're like, we can't get through here. I'm like, we will get through here. I'm like, I talked about this in Madison. They have these little underground things where the doors open up and you drop the goods in and they go in underneath the building. I'm like, why can't we build this thing that flaps up if they got to pull these turbines out? And so what we ended up building was a removable bridge. So it probably only has to happen once a year, but it's got eye bolts on both sides, and the bridge can be pulled up, moved over, they can do their work, and the bridge can get put back.
Yeah.
And so we found a way
That's awesome.
to
That's-
get it done.
yeah.
So it's like Hannibal.
Yeah.
It's a quote from Hannibal. So it's
Nice.
pretty cool.
it's creative. It's great.
Yes.
Very cool.
Brian,
Very cool.
thank you so much for coming. Is there anyone you'd like to shout out? Anything you'd like to say? Any closing comments? If not, we'll.
The St. Ignatius wrestling team, wishing them luck this year. And all the wrestling teams, certainly going through COVID last year, I don't even know if we thought we were going to get a season based
Right.
on what happened. And, I give a lot of the teams credit and the parents for getting their kids out there. And, it's a tough sport, right?
Tough sport.
It's one of those things where, any team that puts yourself out there is a good thing. And wrestling's just one of those lifelong sports. And you got to pick yourself back up, even if you get beat. You shake that person's hand. That's one of the best parts. That's one of the things I missed during COVID is they wouldn't let kids shake hands.
Shake
I don't know. I
hands.
don't.
They can
That's
wrestle, but they
ridiculous.
can't. Dude,
That's-
it was like I'm not gonna lie. It was an eerie type
wasn't
of.
right.
It was not
Yeah.
right. It felt weird.
Yep.
It felt weird. Didn't make sense.
We heard it universally as a coach, as the kids are like, that's one of the things of respect.
Right.
If you get beat, you shake the kid's hand. If you get, if you win, you still shake the kid's hand. You
Right.
hug them, and that's the real part about wrestling.
I also think too the ref actually grabbing the winner's hand and raising it up, and then this guy has to just like.
Yeah.
Dude, it's so little. Someone who doesn't outside of the sport wouldn't really understand, but we know what it means and all that. But it was just unnecessary. They're gonna roll and sweat and stuff like that, but we can't shake hands or raise the guys. It's
They were trying to do the right things.
I get it.
They
I
were
get it.
audible through it, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I literally had hand control for a minute and
Right.
a half, and I was holding the guy's hand, and then at the end, I can't shake it. It's like,
Right.
let's fix this.
Yeah.
Who actually was that an OHSAA rule or what? Like, I
it's
don't.
I think it was state by state, but definitely like. I think you probably saw it throughout the nation. I would probably venture to say the southern states probably didn't really abide by that one, but regardless, I hope that we don't really see stuff like that this season. You know what I'm saying?
I think they're doing it. They're shaking hands.
Okay.
Good.
The season's kicks off.
Yeah.
So the Comic Classic this Friday.
I think it's this weekend for the main week for the first week of competition.
Yep,
right?
and Iron Man comes up right after that.
Heck
So
yeah.
it's on. It's on. I'm ready.
Let's get it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Absolutely, man.
Thanks, Brian.
Absolutely.
Appreciate
Great.
it.
Good stuff, man. Thank you for coming.